Well, hello. I am late. So I'm standing in the shower this morning, and all of a sudden I thought, did I do pens and use? And no, I did not. I forgot all about it. So I'll get into that toward the end of the video. In the meantime, I would like to welcome you to another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is a show where I look at all the pens and inks that I've been using this week, and I have something special. So if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens, both new and old at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And if you'd like to comment on any of these pens or any of my other topics in this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below. So meanwhile, let's take a look at what I'm using. So some of these you've seen before. This is my Parker 21, which I had actually filmed a review of it. You didn't see it yet because it was one of the reviews on the hard drive that died. So it's inked up because I'm going to refilm it. And I think it'll be a little more interesting because I have Pierre Gustafson's Parker 21 right beside it because I thought it'd be neat to see them side by side in this video. I have a Montegrappa Fortuna, which has been exhibiting some interesting behavior, which I'll talk about. I have my Montblanc 32. I had to look at its number. 32. I have a Wahl Eversharp Skyline 50, related to another project I'm working on. Actually, several of these related to another project I'm doing. I have Senator Cracked Blind Cap. I thought it was appropriate, even though it's almost empty, because I'm going to get a little political this week. So there's a senator to bring in the politics. I have another pen from from the Netherlands. It's a Selector 123. And I've been able to find a little more information about it than the Cora, but I'll be honest, I like the Cora a lot better. I have a Super Rotax, which I'm planning to actually film a review of. I'm got some days off. I'm going to film a lot of reviews and store them in multiple places till I get them edited. Lamy 2000 Fine Point, which is back from the dead. Lamy 2000 Broad, which, as I said last week, I had to take one for the team and make sure it still worked after demonstrating nib removal on it. And then I have my surprise pen, which I'll come back to it. I'll give you a small hint. The brand of this pen is Inco, I-N-C-O. So those are the pens that I'm using this week. As always, I'll be recording in my Bomo Art Journal. And no, not my cognitive surplus. I've got a lot of Bomo Art Journal left before I can even think about switching notebooks. And it's kind of appropriate. This is a Hungarian notebook from Budapest, and one of my pens I'm looking at them now. One of those pens is, shall we say, Central European. That's another clue. You've already guessed which one. So let's take a look at how they write. So I had an interesting comment last week when I mentioned about how much I'd enjoyed using my Kaweco V14S during that time when the poor Lamy had its little incident, thanks to my poor care. But anyway, they suggested, why don't you use a different color ink in it and then have two daily writers, and then you can kind of tell when you've written it just by the color ink you use. And I thought, that is a neat idea. So a lot of the pens I was using last week did empty out or were emptied out, and I thought, it's high time to do that. So a lot of the inks you'll see this week are me attempting different daily writing inks. Because, was it Neil Gaiman, I think, does that? He's an author. I may be mispronouncing his name, though. So this first pen is a Parker 21. This is my Parker 21. One of the things worth noting on my Parker 21 is this clip, which I'll rave about when I do the review, but it's supposedly one of the better clips that Parker had, at least on this particular pen model. And you may have noticed it was not the famous arrow clip. So Parker 21, the ink in it is Parker Quink, what else? Blue Black, which is a serious contender for my second daily writing ink. No, Parker Quink Blue is not. It's Just not a daily writing ink. This is Pierre Gustafson's Parker 21, which is currently on loan. I think he's still safely on his trip, so can enjoy these a little longer. I am going to be filming some videos about these. In fact, the first one or two I might do today. His has a different clip than mine, a little more decorated cap. I haven't really researched exactly which 21 model his is, although I probably will if it's going to star in the video. I should also note the nibs on our, although they're very similar pens when you uncap them. The nibs, mine is the one here that my finger's tapping. His is the other one with much less feed exposed. And from the other, so his looks a lot more like a Parker 51. Mine definitely has its own style. So if it weren't for the nibs, I could be totally confused which one's which. His is slightly scratchier than mine, but still a very nice writer. And I'd say that it looks like, it's not the same ink, so it's hard to be sure, but it looks like about the same nib size. And I can't remember now if these had different nib sizes, or because it was a lower cost model, if they all just came with the same nib size. Which brings me to Italy. My only Montegrappa. Although I do like their Bordeaux ink, but they've stopped making it, so yay. It seems like all the inks you like. Okay, I shouldn't say that. But whenever I really like something, it goes off the market. Okay, now this is not Montegrappa ink in it, and you may have noticed a skip there. This pen typically does not have this problem, so I think it's the combination of this pen and this ink. Believe it or not, this is a broad nib, which I remarked on when I filmed its review originally. That is very fine for a broad. The ink in it is Herbin. And I apologize, I did not double check the pronunciation of this. So we'll just go with the very English sounding Damson. Although it probably is pronounced all, differently in French. It's a nice pen. Steel nib, very attractive. I guess if I'm going to talk about it, I should bring it back. Very attractive finish. Writes nicely. But I'm in no hurry to get another one. There just isn't much in Montegrappa's offerings I like. And this ink just, meh. So I think the pen and the ink just don't like each other. Which happens. That was another one. Actually, that one I just put in for fun. It was supposed to be a prettier purple than that, though. This is my wrong company, Montblanc. 32. My very first Montblanc ever. Definitely not at the high end where the 149 lives. This is an extra fine pen with I guess you could call it one of those fingernail type nibs, but I feel like there has to be a real name for this type of nib. This is another ink I was trying as a possible daily writer ink. I don't like it as well as the Parker Quink Blue Black because it's very purple. Even with this extra fine nib. Atramentis Aubergine. Oops, hiding that name from you. So I like this ink. I like eggplants. If you know much about language, you know why I bought this ink. But it's not a daily writer ink to me. And of course, inks do behave differently in different pens. It's possible this would be just marvelous in my Kaweco V14S. So anyway, this is my Wahl Eversharp Skyline 50 which I suppose is a little lower quality model than Mr. Gustafson loaned me, the Wahl Eversharp Skyline. I found on Anderson Pens that there is a modern Skyline, which is a gold nib version of this, and supposedly a bit higher class, better finish, and whatnot. Not really interested in getting it, but it exists. When I reviewed this originally, I mentioned some things about its design I don't like, but I will say it writes well. And I thought of this, well, it was out because of Mr. Gustafson, but I also wanted to try out this ink as a daily writer. This is one of my favorites. I think if it was just for me, this could be a contender. But, in terms of general everyday writing, where I might be writing things at school and whatnot, and the possibility that this ink may disappear from the market again, which has happened before, I don't think it's going to be a daily writer ink. But I like this ink so much. Here's Senator Cracked Blind Cap to bring in a little politics. So named because the blind cap is slightly cracked. And I don't know how to fix that. So, Senator. I don't know model numbers, which is for Senator pens, and I haven't been able to find that information for most of them, which is why I call it things like Senator Cracked Blind Cap, or what was the other one I had? It doesn't matter. Anyway, this is another one of those, what I would for now I'm calling a fingernail nib, but I feel like there is actually a name for these. This pen was a gift from a viewer. Okay, and don't blame the pen for that. Like I said, it is basically empty. I just, since some politics were coming into this, I felt I needed a politician. I'd call that a fine nib, maybe an extra fine. The ink in it, I don't remember what the ink is. Oh! Diamine. This is an ink from a viewer, actually. So is the pen. Diamine Cult Pens, Deep Dark Blue. A nice ink, not really a contender for a daily writer, although it certainly would fit in that genre of inks. It just doesn't appeal to me that way, especially with the sheen that's on it. This next pen, which I may film a review while it's inked up, that wasn't my original plan, but I'm going to, I think. This is a Selector 123E. You can see an E written. I don't know if the E has to do with the nib or if it has, because this is probably the most extra fine nib I own. Well, no, it has to be the model because there's an F, which would be fine. So it has to be the model, unless they put their E and Fs separately. Hooded nib, a lot like a Parker 51. Nib is nothing to rave about. Usually doesn't do that, though. There we go. This isn't a particularly fun pen, although it's okay. So I don't write with it probably as much as I should. Oops, and it's a fine. And the first ink I had in it was horrible because the whole writing experience was like how this started out. It would just skip and second writing experience was like that too. Now it's behaving well with this ink, and I feel like I need to run another fill of something through it just to find out if it's this ink that it likes or if perhaps there was some dirt or something in the pen that I just wasn't able to flush out before. It's a weird, I shouldn't say weird, it's a unusual ink. It's not, don't worry when you see Sumi, this is not going to be one of those pigmented inks. This is actually fountain pen ink. Suddenly I'm thinking I've got the brand wrong, though. It comes in very pretty bottles. And it's theoretically scented, but that's, with a nib this fine, it's really hard to even see that. Smell that! Wow! Speaking of fine nib pens, this is a Super Rotax. Another one I should do a review on while it's inked up. And this I'm also testing a Daily Writer ink in it. Also, it won't be a Daily Writer ink because it's too bright and garish for that purpose. But it is a nice color for highlights or for marking student work or what have you. Or for writing letters. Although people are like, why are you using a fine nib? Use the pretty nibs. But no. All nibs are, if they write, have their own purposes. So this is a Atramentis. Mint Turquoise, which is in a broader nib, is a very attractive color. This pen, it looks sort of washed out. Let's be honest. Lamy 2000 is back in service. It's like she never left. Drinking a steady diet of Lamy black ink. And then since last week I demonstrated how to replace the nib in a Lamy pen with this one, I had to make sure that I didn't cause leakage here. And I did! So it's taken a little bit of adjusting to get it right. So take them apart at your own peril. And this is Noodler's ink. Another one of my favorites. It would never really be a Daily Writer ink, but it's beautiful. Okay, just because of the ink and the broad nib, I need 3 lines. Oh, there must still be a little ink around, but it may have been in the cap because I got it on my fingers. And now we come to the political part of this. So I have my Inco. This is a Polish pen, and if you've watched this for any length of time, you know my interest in Central European pens. I've even had some people say, why are you bothering with these crappy pens? Well, it's because I'm interested, and that was literally a comment once, because I'm interested in them. They're a little piece of history. So this one is, you can see the name Inco, although unless you look closely, it does look like IKEA, made in Poland. That's all there is to it. This, I think, was a decorative band, which has come off. There's definitely some corrosion up here at the cap. I'm not going to claim that this is any kind of a fabulous pen, but here's something interesting. Unscrew the blind cap. This is a syringe filler, which means I push this down. There's an ink window here, but I push this down to bring down a plunger, just like in a syringe, and then I pull it back out and it draws up the ink. This pen was disgusting and filthy when I got it. You can also see it's sort of deformed over time. I had a heck of a time cleaning it, and then I had to take it apart and lubricate the piston in there and everything. But what I find interesting on this pen, where was that nib made? And this apparently was the nib that came with these pens. So, a pen company from behind the Iron Curtain using a US-made nib. How does that happen? Anyway, I found that very interesting, and like I said, that's where the politics comes in. Some of you may cringe at the ink I'm using. The reason I like this ink in this pen right now is it's a lubricating ink, and it's very good at cleaning stuff out. I don't know why, but I've read that. Other people have said that too. It's a Noodler's ink. First few sentences I wrote with this pen were purple. As much as I had cleaned it, and even though the water was coming clear from it, purple. So there was still a lot of ink in there somewhere. I mean, I think this person had left it inked up on the counter when, hey, got a ballpoint for you. Or maybe they were hauled off by the secret police, whatever they were called in Poland. I don't know. But anyway, I think it was just left that way because I couldn't get the piston to move or anything. So that was a long, drawn-out cleaning process that involved my ultrasonic cleaner. Many, many times. I couldn't even pull the piston to get it to draw ink, and so there was soaking, and oh boy. Plus the pen didn't look green when I bought it, so there was a lot of just filth on it. So I think it sat in somebody's kitchen too. Anyway, it's found a good home now. And down the road, eventually I will review it. So those are the pens and inks that I have in use this week. Like I said, a Polish pen. You can probably guess from my last name that I have Polish heritage. My family came over in the 20s or 30s. Had actually more to do with the Roman Catholic Church than it had to do with Poland. But here we are, and I'm not Catholic because of everything. So, I've always been interested in what's going on in Poland. Maybe that's part of my interest in Eastern European pens. I will say my family probably got out a good time because life in Poland became interesting. And not in a good way. First because of the Germans, later because of the Soviets. So I still follow a little bit what's going on there. I will say Poland has a long history of protests. I would be comfortable saying a lot of the fall of the Iron Curtain happened. It was inspired in Poland. I mean, there were people all over those Eastern Bloc countries that helped and caused it. But Lech Wałęsa was a very influential man that way and inspired a lot of people. Actually, despite what I just said about the Roman Catholic Church, Pope John Paul, for all of his faults, was very active in that also. And I'm not a history channel, so I don't want to delve too deeply into it. This is more to encourage you to read about it. But it's interesting as Poland's government has attempted to do some totalitarian things, the protests that have been happening in Poland. And I put a few links down below just to give you a taste, but that's my politics for the day. I had an East meets West pen, and now I ranted about Polish politics for a little. So those are the pens I have in use. Now, why didn't I film this like I usually do? I've had 2 days off from school. I wasn't in my routine. I had planned to film it Thursday night because it was a busy week until then. But didn't think of it because I was out of my routine. I have actually been spending a lot of time at school on my days off trying to get my classroom reorganized, and you need to do that when you don't have students or people running around, so that's what I've been doing. And like I said, I was in the shower this morning. I thought, I never filmed pens in use, so here I am Saturday morning. I was planning to be in the classroom again working, so filming pens in use, but that's okay. This afternoon I'll be going to our regional playoff football game, which is the first one we have ever hosted in the whole history of the school district. And, of course, photographing that for the paper. So I won't get into schoolwork done this afternoon, but there's always Sunday. I'll get, I was hoping to also do a lot of housework, but this school project, wow. You think a project is one size, and it's a lot bigger. So I'm glad I allowed extra time because, oh baby. But the results are going to be worth it. Not to you unless you're one of my students, but to me, for my sanity, very worth it. I've got one other thing I want to show you. I'm taking a class on cybernetics and robotics. Did our first session in Dickinson, I guess 2 weeks ago now, a week or two, I can't remember. We're using our Arduino robot, so I'm showing you some footage of this robot right now. I programmed it to follow in this path that's laid out by masking tape, and my first attempt wasn't so good. Second attempt, very good. Dealing with the carpet was a big obstacle. And then the last run I did, I decided to put turn signals on it for every time it made a turn. But of course, I used an older version of the program for the driving part where it wasn't quite going in the path. So it's a little less than impressive. But anyway, I'll be going back a few more times for this class. It's an all-day class every time. I'll learn a lot more. And then there's a big project, which guess what I'm doing over Christmas break. And but at the end of this, in January sometime, I'm going to be able to bring about $1,000 worth of robotics equipment back to the school district. So that will fit perfectly into one of the classes I teach. So I am very much looking forward to that. And then I get to teach my students what I've been learning. And it has been interesting. So if you've ever worked with an Arduino, you have an idea. We also, in the first session of the class, we did some wiring on the top of the robot. Whoops. Oh yeah, we started with some wiring on top, just LEDs and what's a circuit and so on. And we put in a speaker. We had it play music with an Arduino, because that's what controls the robot. This class that I teach has been doing electronics all fall, so they will be very much ahead, way in advance of what you would do with the robot on the electronics front. So I'm curious to see what we can do to marry the two together. We'll see. So anyway, that's my excitement, and I hope you enjoyed my political Polish pen there. Like I said, when I saw the U.S. nib on a Polish pen, I'm like, that's a politics pen. I don't know the full story, but I would guess, that's a fairly generic nib. I would guess that they were just sold to whoever bought them, and Inco bought them. I mean, there was a lot more cross-the-border fertilization and trading than you would think. So, anyway, very interesting. So, if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old, I would invite you to subscribe. And if you'd like to comment on my political Polish pen, or any of the other pens and inks that I use today, or perhaps the robots, or my off-the-wall comments about Poland itself, perhaps you've experienced life behind the Iron Curtain, and can offer more insight, because I lived it here in the United States, so I saw it through the TV and the newspapers, not through actual experience. So I would love to have any insights, whether you disagree with me totally or agree with me or have something new you want to throw in. That'd be wonderful. So I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.